Subway Everyday Value means many mouth-watering pile-high favorites are $5 footlongs, like the fresh toasted tempting meatball marinara and made-to-your-order BLT. The $5 footlong anthem rolls on, only at Subway, where great everyday value lives. Subway, eat fresh. The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't
The
care.
BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to the BS Report. Baseball starting in just 6 days. It feels early this year. I have a theory on this. I think it feels early because the Super Bowl was like a week late, and usually there's like that extra week delay between the Super Bowl and opening day, and this year there's not. All of a sudden it's upon us. Let's go to the Subway Fresh Take Hotline from ESPN. Keith Law, how's it going?
Good. You?
There's too much going on. Opening day, March Madness, the Masters, NBA playoffs. My head's spinning, and I need like another week to get ready for baseball, and I don't have it, and it's upon us. So, first of all, give us like the lowdown on the NL, because we were exchanging emails, and you said that you thought there were only 4 quality National League teams. Do you still feel that way?
Yeah, I do. To me, I hate to sort of predict like what we're going to see this year is a lot like last year because it doesn't usually play out that way. But the Phillies, the Cardinals, and I think the Rockies, I mean, those are pretty clear favorites to win those 3 divisions for me.
Yep.
And I'd say the Braves are probably just behind them. Not as good as the Phillies. I certainly wouldn't pick them to pass the Phillies. But I think those are probably your 4 playoff teams. Those are at least the 4 teams I'm going to predict to make the playoffs. And you could make a case for the Marlins as a dark horse. You can make a case for the Dodgers. They did go to the playoffs last year, but I think they're worse now, especially that rotation, than they were a year ago. That starts to thin out real quick. Then NL Central is horrible. If the Cardinals don't win about 94, 95 games, I'd be really shocked. It's just the back half of the National League is terrible. The back half of the American League should beat the heck out of the back half of the National League when it comes to interleague play.
How many quality teams do you think the American League has?
Well, you got at least 3 in the AL East. And Baltimore's an interesting team. They've got all this great young pitching. I'm just not going to say that it's going to take that big step forward this year. But I mean, Baltimore's an above-average team probably in the National League, and they're a below-average team in the American League. And that whole AL West, they might finish the season separated by like 6 or 7 games. Even Oakland, who I think I've got finishing last, I mean, they've got some incredible young pitching, and they've got a lot of bats coming. Chris Carter, Michael Taylor, but they chose to send those guys out, probably in part for service time reasons. If those guys were going to play a full season there, they might instead of being my pick to finish in last, they might be my pick to finish in second or first. So I think you've probably got 10 quality teams in the American League using the same standard that I was saying for 4 or 5 in the National League.
Well, it's been pretty lopsided for a few years. What's the reason?
I think the biggest reason, well, there's 2. I mean, one is money. The American League teams, they have tended to spend more money. But to me, the interesting reason is that you've had a lot of the smarter, more progressive front offices showing up in the American League. The Red Sox were like that. Tampa Bay obviously has gotten a lot of credit for that. And when you're in a division, when you're Baltimore, and you're in a division with a couple of really smart, progressive front offices doing different things at the major league level, evaluating defense differently, putting more money into the draft, sink or swim, right? You either imitate them or even try to come up with your own sort of best practices, or you're going to lose 100 games every year. So there's been this increased competitive pressure in the American League to just kind of get smarter. And in the National League, we've had some really awful front offices, some of which are gone now, but some really backwards front offices for a long time. And so that competitive pressure hasn't been there. I mean, when Pittsburgh's out there running losing seasons out there for 15 years in a row, they're not a threat. If you're the Cubs, you're not looking at the Pirates saying, wow, man, we got to get smarter so that the Pirates don't pass us.
I haven't looked at the breakdown of mid-major markets, major markets, and small markets, but are there more in the NL, or is it basically the same?
Well, it's that Yankees-Red Sox thing sort of skews the whole American League. So Toronto, Baltimore, Tampa Bay's never going to play like a big market, but Toronto and Baltimore could kind of go either way. Toronto's the biggest city in Canada. They certainly have the population and the media market to be a big market team, and I think they're kind of headed back in that direction now with the GM change there, that they want to play like one. but they realized they got to fix the farm system first because it was really in pretty sad shape at the end of last year. In Baltimore, same thing. I mean, they could pack that house if they would actually just put a competitive product on the field. But for years under Angelos, he kept plowing money into aging veterans, just try to get one more run out of that core, and the fan base abandoned them. But I think in a couple of years they're going to run out a 90-win season. They're going to pack the place again, and they'll get to play like a major market, like they did in the 90s. So you've got a lot of teams that are kind of on the fence in the American League that could go big market if they had the incentive to do so, or if they had, they get that one big season out there, get the fans back, the revenues come back, and then they start plowing it back into the big league roster.
But still, like you think it, like I'm looking at the NL right now. Philly, big market.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Atlanta, at least fairly big. Mets, gigantic.
But
Washington.
The Mets don't play like one. That's the
No.
team that's been the critic. And of course, apparently they lost all their money to Bernie Madoff or something. But they don't. They're cheap. They spent less in the draft last year than the 29 other teams, which is atrocious. If you're the Mets, you should be a top 5 spending team in the draft every year.
So you're saying they're like a 1980s big market team?
Yeah, with the same absolute dollar figures, right? They just have not figured it out yet. They'll put some money into the big league product, but nowhere else. And you can't ignore scouting and player development. I mean, the Red Sox and Yankees have learned that, and they've been plowing money into the draft and into the international market for years. Whereas the Mets are still one of the lowest spending teams on the amateur side, which it's going to bite you in the long run. And you're seeing that now, that the Mets don't have the depth in the farm system to kind of come up and replace some of the guys who've been hurt at the big league level.
Couldn't Washington potentially be at least like a minor big market team?
I think they could be a huge big market team. It might be 3-4 years before they get there, but they got a brand new ballpark, pretty good capacity, relatively easy to get to. I know it's not a great area, but it's right off the subway, so who cares?
Yeah.
I think their medium market, they're primed for a good team. You've got a fan base there that's been desperate for anything for 40 years. And just hearing from national fans, they're like, just give us a competitive product. You don't even have to win the division. But you just put a winning team on the field, we're going to go.
The biggest, loss out of all the teams is the Dodgers, because I think the divorce has just paralyzed them. But that's a team that should be a top 5 or 6 market in all of baseball, and it's just not.
No, it's not. They're not acting like one. I think the divorce is probably a big reason. I mean, they should have been more active. I expected them to be more active this off season. And, they do a good job of getting talent into the farm system, but Coletti's MO is just like Sabian's, because that's who he used to work for, which is that most of your prospects are just trade fodder. You get a guy up to AA who's got some trade value, quick flip him for the best veteran available. So they're, Logan Light and Tim Hallgrim, their scouting staff, they're getting these players into the system. But the moment that they have some significant trade value, I think the GM really looks at them and says, how can I use those guys to make the big league team better now?
And the biggest one of that was Carlos Santana.
Oh, my God. I mean, I didn't see Santana live until after the trade happened, but it's one of those where I walked in, I'm like, they gave this guy up for Casey Blake, a switch-hitting catcher who can catch and throw. And the only knock on him has been his game calling was just a little bit behind. But, I mean, really, who cares? That's one of the easiest things for a moderately intelligent catcher to pick up. You can't teach a guy how to hit, not to hit like Santana hits. I had him as the 3rd best prospect in baseball because the value of that bat behind the plate, I mean, anybody who's played fantasy can tell you get a bat like that at catcher, makes your whole team better. And that's just as true at the big league level because, look, somebody's going to start Jason Kendall as a catcher at catcher this year in real baseball. Like that shows you how bad the position is right now.
I think it's a shame with the Dodgers because they did produce an inordinate amount of quality guys, and they got rid of a couple of them. A couple of them have blossomed. And in the market that they have, if they had just gone over the top and spent for 1 or 2 big guns on top of what they had, that's potentially like a 98-win team in that league.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they just didn't do it. Like for instance, that's a team that if somebody's going to throw gigantic money at John Lackey, it probably should have been the Dodgers because it goes from AL to NL.
In the rotation too.
Yeah, and get one more bopper and they're good to go. And now it's too bad because I do think living out here for 7 years, I have come to like that franchise, and they have real fans. Like it's not the LA stereotype; it's fans that go back generations. The stadium is awesome. And it's a team that just should be good. It should own the city. And I think the divorce has kind of knocked them off the tracks. You brought up prospects before. It seems like we have an inordinate amount of big ones this year. Either guys who are either going to break into the league this year, who are going to break into it at the end of the season, or who kind of showed flashes last year and might take it to the next level. Is it just me, or are there more? now.
There's a ton right now. And in fact, I think if this was like 10, 15 years ago, we'd be talking about this unbelievable rookie crop. But now this whole new emphasis on sending guys down to push back their free agency or push them back from Super 2 status. A lot of these guys, like Santana, he'd have the big league job in Cleveland if this was 15 years ago. Chris Carter would be in Oakland's lineup. And I'm not saying that the only reason they're sending them down is for service time, but that's definitely a factor. That's something that's changed. So you're going to see, instead of all these guys being up in April, May, June, July, we're going to see this slew of call-ups. It's going to be sort of one big prospect name after another. All these top 25, top 30 guys off my list are going to start to appear in the majors over the next 3 months as opposed to being out there the first week of the season.
And I got to say, besides just it being counterproductive, I do think it's damaging for these guys because think about it psychologically. You're in their spring training. You know that you should be on the team. You're ready. You're ready to take the next step, to get challenged, to get thrown into the fire. And then your team's like, no, actually, you're going to go back to the minors for 6-7 more weeks. I just think it would be hard to maintain your focus and all that stuff. And then when you finally do get thrown in the fire, you've come off this sort of pseudo low. It doesn't seem like it works.
And the thing that always bothers me, it's player to player, obviously, but the thing I keep coming back to, and this was Brian Mattis last year, and it didn't hurt him with Baltimore, but this was my issue with they sent him all the way down to A-ball. But I said, you're talking about a 21-year-old college pitcher, Division I product, with 4 pitches. And conservatively, you could say 3 of them are above average. This guy missed bats everywhere he pitched in college. A-ball hitters are not going to present any challenge to this guy. What is he going to learn developmentally from ripping through the Carolina League for a couple of weeks? And sure enough, he ripped through the minors, and he was up, I think, in the middle of July last year. And it wasn't really until he got to the big leagues that he was challenged. This guy had things to work on, but he couldn't work on them until he faced hitters who were good enough to catch up to his stuff. And so now there's probably going to be continued development for him in 2010, when maybe he could have gotten that done in 2009, and then 2010 he's ready to go out there and be a front of the rotation guy.
Stephen Strasburg in Washington, do you think he could have started the season?
Yeah, he's the best pitcher in the organization for me. I mean, there's nobody with that kind of stuff anywhere in their system. All
right, well, I'm going to do the VP of Common Sense routine here. You got this team in Washington that has really lost a lot of momentum the last few years. Mm-hmm. The Capitals, right now, it's April. Washington's really become a hockey town. You got the NFL draft coming up. The Nationals basically blown off the radar locally. Why? I understand the whole logic of let's send this guy down for a few weeks because that gives us an extra year of negotiations. But if he's good, they'll end up tearing up his deal and giving him the Justin Upton extension anyway. So what's the point of reducing his free agent rates? Don't you want to bring him up and get some buzz going on your team?
So here's what I would have done if I was the Nationals. I would have sent him down for basically like 3 weeks. Push off get the extra year of free agency. For the difference between 2-3 starts this year, to get the extra year of control 6 years down the road, that makes perfect sense to me. And
I guess.
So you bring Strasburg up like May 1st or April 26th, right after the NFL draft. The Capitals could, you never know, obviously, but they could be on their way out at that point. You get to that point where it's kind of, hey, there's an opportunity here to make some noise locally. Let them get a couple tune-up starts going in the minors. Personally, I might have even sent him like to the Carolina League, say, so he could make a couple of warmer starts than the Eastern League. But whatever. You bring him up after 3-4 starts, and then suddenly when your team's probably like 8-15, oh, by the way, we're bringing Strasburg up. So instead of getting 10,000 fans at one of his home starts, you get 40,000. They're going to sell out his first 4 or 5 home starts, no question. And if he actually pitches well, they might do it for the rest of the season.
And I guess with pitchers, it does make... it doesn't totally kill you to take those first 3-4 weeks off because those guys are in pitch counts anyway. It's not like they're going to throw 240 innings.
No, and they've taken it easy with him because he had a little bit of tightness in fall league that wasn't serious. But you got to be careful with this guy. He's the jewel of the franchise, and you're not winning anything this year. Your hope is that Strasburg in 2012, 2013 is going out there and throwing 220 innings a year and contending for Cy Young awards because maybe by that point the surrounding cast is actually going to be competitive.
Well, I can't remember a season. I'm very AL-centric, obviously.
Right.
That's what the Red Sox, I watch every Red Sox game. I'm in an AL keeper league. I just don't have the time to throw myself into the National League when I'm already thrown into the AL League. I feel like you have to pick and choose a little bit as you get older, unless it's your only sport that you follow.
Right.
Anyway, this is the first time I can remember legitimately being intrigued by, I want to see Strasburg and I want to see Jason Heyward.
Yep.
And obviously have the package. This is the first time I can remember a scenario where I actually might have National League games on in the Batcave. Jason Heyward, I've got to get that game on. Am I overthinking this? Are these guys actually worth the hype?
No, there's some really interesting rookies and young players in the National League. I mean, I think Colby Rasmus is one of those guys on St. Louis. He's just a guy that I really enjoy watching him play. I love watching him play center field because I think he's going to be top 5 in baseball by the time he reaches his peak. And he takes unbelievable at-bats. This kid's an advanced hitter for his age. It hasn't really shown up in the stat line yet, but I think it's coming. Maybe this year. I hope it's this year. Maybe it's a year down the road. Andrew McCutcheon's kind of the same thing in Pittsburgh. And I know nobody wants to watch the Pirates because they're going to lose 95 games this year. But, again, they've got this one really exciting player who, if you could just flip over and just catch his at-bats and watch him play center field a little bit, it's worth it. He's that good. There were a bunch of those young guys who are they haven't quite hit the national radar yet, but I think they're going to, if not this year, then in the next 2 years. Do
you think it's strange that baseball, for whatever reason, has not developed those big-time cross-sport, mainstream type of personalities other than really Jeter and A-Rod? That's it.
Yeah. In fact, it was funny. My wife was watching the Dancing with the Stars last night. She had no idea who Ocho Cinco was. Absolutely none before a week ago. And now he's her favorite football player because, he's funny and he's charming and she thinks he's really good looking. And so, and I'm sitting there thinking, I wish baseball had a guy like that, actually, a guy who's funny. And, the way he's kind of marketed himself beyond the game, even before the dancing stuff, just going out on Twitter and we don't have that. We don't have a personality like that. We have good guys, but nobody who's really kind of transcended the game and become a media star who might actually just bring in more casual fans sort of from the periphery back into baseball a little bit. We need a guy like that. But, everyone thought A-Rod could be that guy, but it's clearly not his personality.
Is it kind of a marketing thing, though? To some degree, it's got to be, right? I guess take the NBA. Mm-hmm. They have Nike, they have Adidas. Yeah. The NBA is great at selling individual matchups, like Miami and Orlando, Wade against Howard.
And we have MLB has Viagra.
Yeah, maybe baseball needs to start doing that, though. Maybe you're pitching Hanley Ramirez instead of the Marlins, things like that. It is strange to me, though. Like as you said, what baseball players would have even been famous enough to crack the Dancing with the Stars cast? I'm trying to think.
Jeter's the one guy who crosses over, especially because he has a female fan base.
Pujols?
He's not, by all accounts, just a very kind of mild-mannered.
Yeah.
He's not that you need that guy who's got that effusive personality, he's magnetic. That's always been Jeter's thing. That people are just kind of drawn to him. And
he's too cool to do it, though.
Yeah, probably. He doesn't need to.
I have the guy. I just thought of him. Manny. Manny would do it, too.
I would watch.
How great would that be?
That would be unbelievable. Might be better than Master P in the first or second season.
I guess the schedules wouldn't work out because they start doing it in
they need to retire.
March.
They need like Emmitt Smith was the year or two out of the league and he was on the show. That's what they a guy like that who's just retired from baseball.
Oh God.
Who are our stars? Greg Maddux. He's not that personality. He said his favorite thing to do in his spare time was play video games.
Let's hope and pray Kurt Schilling isn't listening to this with a light bulb flickering over his head. So do you think that out of all these young guys, it really seems like Jason Heyward could get some, I don't want to jinx it, but you know what I'm saying? He could get some mainstream momentum because by all accounts, this guy is just once in a generation. Yeah, he's the it boy for the year. Because he's unusually polished for his age. When I saw him in high school, I saw some of that sort of plate discipline, that approach at the plate. But the thing that you noticed when he was a 17-year-old senior was that, I was 34, and I'm standing next to him, and a scout friend of mine is laughing. It's he towered over you. Heyward looked older than I did. I didn't look 34, but he looked a hell of a lot older than 17. Yeah. Guys like that who are he's physically advanced, and his approach at the plate is advanced. That's a guy who could really come out and be a star at 21, 22. Kind of like Justin Upton has been, but Upton playing in a, West Coast, Western Division, smaller media market. He hasn't really broken through. I mean, he's that kind of superstar, at least in terms of talent. Heyward, at least, East Coast, Atlanta's always gotten a little more media attention. He might have a little bit more opportunity to kind of cross over like that. And he does. He has that
superstar potential at the young age where it's, he could have like a 10, 15-year run where he's a top 10 player in the league.
Does he have the personality?
Great kid is what everyone, that's kind of the response. I don't know how outgoing. I read his Twitter feed and it's kind of, I hate to say generic, but like he's not out, the way Chad Johnson uses his.
Yeah.
He's outgoing. And he's a little controversial. It has to be somebody who's not afraid to say something a little crazy. That's going to get some media attention, and then it all comes back. And then you can always apologize afterwards. That's kind of the lesson for a lot of these guys. It doesn't matter if you say something that's a little bit over the edge. You can always kind of back off afterwards, but you can't buy that kind of attention. I don't know of any player out there in baseball now who's kind of using it that way. Any of these social media.
I'd like to see the Phillies-Braves thing kind of go to another level because that's a rivalry that I feel like could take off because now the Phillies have been in the mainstream for 2 years.
Yep.
2 straight World Series. They have Rollins and Ryan Howard, who actually feels like he should be a bigger personality than he is. And then the Roy Halladay thing, obviously. Mm-hmm. This guy trapped on bad teams for the most part. A guy I was always terrified of whenever he pitched against the Red Sox. And somebody that I think will be, this sounds weird, but better on a good team. I think with 35, 40,000 fans at every home game just going crazy and kind of the passion in that city, I think he could have a career year. Some guys shrink from that stuff. I think he's the opposite.
No, I think he's wanted this for his entire career. He's wanted this kind of opportunity. He's that kind of guy too. He's a tunnel. He just tunnels in. It doesn't matter that there's 40,000 fans screaming for him, screaming against him. He's out there to knock you on your ass.
But that could be a fun rivalry. Yankees, Red Sox is the signature.
It's not the Mets. I mean, the Mets are. I look at the Mets. I'm like, I've seen this movie before. The big payroll, bunch of stars, not going to come close to expectations. Front office on the brink. They're not a competitor to the Phillies right now. The Phillies need somebody to kind of chase them. Like the Cardinals don't have that. It's not the Cubs. It's not the Brewers. There's nobody in the Central who's going to chase the Cardinals. The Phillies, Atlanta at least I think has that chance because they've got the really strong rotation. They've got a couple of impact guys in the lineup, and I think Heyward is going to be one of them. I don't think they're as good as the Phillies, but they could hang with the Phillies for most of the season.
How do you feel about this realignment thing?
I hate it. The more I see about it, the more I hate it. This idea that like, oh yeah, we're going to go tank the season and play with the Yankees and the Red Sox for a year. What the hell does that say to your fans?
Yeah, I don't.
That's really the whole problem, right? The whole realignment thing, it's not about small market and big market. It's about the Yankees and the Red Sox basically putting it to the Rays, Orioles, and Blue Jays every year. That's your problem, is that it's so hard for a team like the Rays, who will probably never run a $100 million payroll, to compete year in and year out with the Red Sox and Yankees. They can compete every couple of years because they do an incredible job on the scouting and player development side, but they can't hang with them year in, year out. They certainly can't stand a year where they have one or two key injuries, or a B.J. Upton, who's supposed to be in the heart of their lineup, has an off year. That's it. I mean, they're toast in a year like that, whereas the Yankees and Red Sox can actually kind of spend their way around a problem like that.
Well, why not just go back to 2 divisions per league?
That's what I want. I mean, I've always thought that made more sense. I don't really understand the added appeal of, I mean, did anybody care? Oh, we won 4 straight division titles. Well, there's 4 teams in your division. Congratulations. Like, no, nobody gets excited about that. You get excited about just the matter of being in the playoffs. And then, obviously, get excited if you win the World Series. So, to me, those are the significant things. Any situation, any realignment to, say, to 2 divisions in each league, as long as you're putting the same number of teams in the playoffs, I don't think it's going to hurt anybody. I don't think any fans are going to be disappointed that, we're not going to win the Central crown this year.
Yeah, I agree. I'd like to see them cut down 154 games to do 2 divisions, and I don't want to get crazy, but I wouldn't mind expanding the playoffs just a tiny bit, just a little, just a tiny.
To put more teams in, or to do more games in that first series?
I think we should figure out. I would do 12, and I would give the top 4. So I guess the top 2 in each league, I would give them a bye in round 1. The only reason I'm saying is this, because that game 163 last year was awesome. Mm-hmm. And if we could figure out a way to kind of do those 3-game series for that round 1 and kind of raise the intensity of that round 1, and the only way you can avoid it is by winning one of the 4 divisions. Right. If you don't win those, you have to play in that round 1, that best of 3, anything can happen. I don't know. I think I'd sign off on that.
See, the idea of a play-in game, so you put So just sticking with the current division, 3 division winners in each league. Then instead of 1 wild card, you have 2, and they play a play-in game. So it increases the incentive to win a division, the disincentive to just be the wild card, because now you have to burn a good starter in this play-in game just to get in, and so that your rotation is kind of out of whack for the first round of the playoffs. I mean, I think if you're going to see any kind of change to the playoffs, that's the thing that's most likely, because it's the easiest. It doesn't really sort of upset the whole apple cart of the current system. It puts one more team into that that can say they actually made some sort of postseason. And you're right, the playing game was unbelievable. I'm pretty sure Fernando Rodney is actually still on the mound in the Metrodome, waiting for Jim Leyland to take him out.
I don't know how I just found this out, because I follow the AL pretty obsessively, but the Fernando Rodney, $11 million to be the Angels setup man has to be the weirdest. And he's not even technically totally the setup man, but that was the weirdest contract of the winter for me.
Yeah, that one and Brandon Lyon. It's like all these teams that have decided middle relievers are totally fungible, and we're not going to dump all this money down that toilet again. And then the Angels and Astros decide to put it's like $26 million total into 2 guys. Like they're still playing with last decade's playbook.
The Pedro Feliz signing was another one for
That
Houston.
was another one. Oh, the Astros are they're just in a death spiral right now at the big league level.
Is their GM like 97 years old? I don't want to get those computers away from me.
Yeah. It's Ed Wade. I mean, he's doing exactly the thing he did in Philly, where he was like, it was like one middle reliever after another. He would get the list of the offseason's free agents, cross off all the position players, cross off all the starters, give me the list of middle relievers. Those are the guys I got to get.
Does anyone win 100 games this year?
I think the Yankees got a pretty good chance. And I mean, if the Cardinals, if everything clicks for them just because the division is bad, I mean, the Pirates are going to lose close to 100, I think, kind of by design. They've basically stripped down the big league roster. And, I mean, I could see the Astros being a 90-plus loss team easily. Those are, I think, your 2 best bets. But the thing with the Yankees is that the Red Sox are really good, and the Rays are going to be good. The Rays would probably win 4 other divisions. So it just limits your ability to get up into the upper 90s. In the win total, even though I think the Yankees on paper are probably a better team now than they were at the end of last season.
I'm terrified of the Rays. They have these guys, these prospects that you think they're done, and then now this guy, Jeremy Hellickson, I was reading Gammons' column on MLB.com this weekend, and he talked to 6 scouts, and all of them had Hellickson and Wade Davis ranked ahead of David Price, who was the it boy 2 years ago. It's like, really? They have 2 guys ahead of David Price?
Yeah, they're pretty good.
I mean, when does it end?
It doesn't, because they got Desmond Jennings ready at some point to step in if they trade Carl Crawford, or if Upton goes down and hits $190 again. I mean, they actually got a guy right now who they can plug in. This is why I think this could be one of their years, where last year they didn't have the guys ready to plug in when things started going wrong at the big league level. This year they actually do. That next wave of their prospects is coming for them. And I mean, I love Davis. That's power stuff. I mean, he looks built stuff-wise, fastball, breaking ball. That's a number 2 starter. Whereas Hellickson's kind of like your 4-pitch command guy. And if he just shows that he can stay healthy for an entire season, I mean, that's the thing. They got 6-7 starters ready to go. So if somebody gets hurt, and somebody will get hurt, this is the year where they actually have somebody ready to plug in.
I'm going to say around 2002, 2003, the teams with money, or at least some of them, decided, hey, wait a second, instead of just throwing money around at free agents and that's how we use our advantage, why don't we throw it into our farm system? Mm-hmm. And now it seems like we're seeing the fruits to some degree. And Tampa's not a great example for this because they're not a big market team, but the teams that have thrown money into their minor league system basically all of a sudden seem like they're loaded for this decade with power arms and athletes.
Yep.
Do you see this decade just swinging so far toward those teams and away from the other teams that it's almost going to become a little unfair?
I think the first half of this decade, you're going to see those teams that got on that train early have a pretty significant competitive advantage. I mean,
and who are those teams? Red Sox?
Red Sox were one of the first on that. I mean, Tampa Bay, they've got I think they've got a couple more years of a good run there because they're going to have cheap pitching. It's the one thing that they always said. I remember Andrew Friedman, when he got the job, kind of said, but we can't afford free agent starters, not on a regular basis. We got to develop those guys internally. We might be able to go out and afford a position player, or they get a 1-year closer this year in Soriano because it's just the chips kind of fell their way. But they've actually got this wave of young pitching that's here now. So maybe it doesn't all click this year. Baltimore's kind of the same thing. They've got this wave of young pitching of their own coming with Mattis, Tillman, Ferguson, Zach Britton, who I think is kind of one of the best prospect sleepers in the minors right now. I mean, they've got a bunch of these guys coming. It's not this is not their year in Baltimore, but a year or so from now, because they've been doing this for 4 years now. It takes a good 4 or 5 years for any of that kind of process to start to manifest itself at the big league level.
And Oakland would you throw them in there?
Yeah, I mean, I love their young pitching. It's just they've got to get all these hitters to the big leagues now and get them, their 500,000 at-bats at the big league level so they're really ready to produce. But I think Brett Anderson's a fringe Cy Young candidate this year. And I don't know. I didn't see Trevor Cahill. When I saw him a couple weeks ago, he did not throw very well. But, I mean, going back to what he was coming up through the minors, there were people who liked him better than Anderson. I thought Anderson was the better guy, but there were a lot of people who thought Cahill was the number one starter and Anderson was the number two. So, I mean, they've got a lot of the pieces there. Again, it's just not all there right now for 2010.
And another team that was never like a huge prospect team, but now Texas all of a sudden.
Oh, they're stacked. Every time I go over there, I mean, I'll go to their minor league fields and see their A-ball clubs, and it's like one guy after another throwing 94. They had two guys who were suspended for over 5 years for their participation in this marriage visa scam, and they just got cleared, and Alexi Ogando is the one of the two who's kind of the talk of Arizona. I saw him twice, 93, 96, got a chance for an above-average breaking ball. It's a loose arm. Obviously, he hasn't thrown that much because he's been throwing like 20 innings a year in the Dominican Summer League, even though he was 25 years old. I mean, he's not there now. He's going to start in the minors, but he could advance real quick. And it's just like, I mean, this guy would be a number 2, number 3 prospect in a lot of systems. For Texas, it's like, yeah, we got another arm.
Yeah. And they have one of your favorites, right? Martin Perez?
Martin Perez is unbelievable. I saw him the other day. He is unbelievable. I always laugh because people said, oh, he's like Johan Santana. And people said that because he's Venezuelan, he's left-handed.
And he's short. He's like 6 feet tall, right?
Yeah, he looks like him. I mean, he really, even from like just seeing him on the mound, it's like if you told me that was Johan Santana, just a little younger, I wouldn't argue with you. It really does look like him. And he's got, the changeup is there. He just doesn't have the feel for it. With Santana, we think of Santana 2003, 2004. This guy the changeup was a finished product. For Perez, he'll throw 3, and one of them will just knock you on your ass. And the other 2, he's overthrowing it. And he's got that learning ahead of him. So he's not a this-year guy, but I had 3 different scouts or front office people tell me this winter, that's the best left-handed prospect in baseball. Over Brian Mattis, who's already in the big leagues.
Oof.
Yeah, high praise.
See, well, for my keeper league with our minor league draft and stuff, I like going for the position guys over the pitchers because the pitchers, it's almost like it's like walking across a field that has grenades in it and you just don't know when you're going to walk on one of them.
Right.
At least with position guys, I know I'm gonna get them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know Desmond Jennings is going to be in the major leagues and do well, but somebody like Perez, who sounds awesome, who knows? You're researching him on Google one day and be like, oh yeah, he left that game with shoulder stiffness. He's going to see Dr. James Andrews. What?
But how about Madison Bumgarner? Last year, he's in everybody's top 10. Not just mine, but I think every list you'll find, he was top 10, top 15 at worst. This year, I backed him off to like 27, 28, because it's like, his velocity was kind of down at the end of last year. That's not really that common. Then I saw him a couple weeks ago. He's 87, 88. And the Giants were all excited. Well, he hit 91 in his last outing. What's the end of March? I mean, if he's hitting 91 now, he's still behind. This guy was a premium prospect. They were ready. He's 20 years old. They were ready to give him the 5th starter spot. They had to change their entire plan around him because he's lost probably 3 miles an hour off his fastball, and no one knows why.
How about Dustin Ackley and the Mariners? When do we see him?
Well, they're converting him to second base, so I think that changes his timetable. If the plan had been we're going to leave him in center field, I think he's one of those up-in-a-year guys, but they might have to slow it up now to give him more reps at second base. It's high risk, high reward, because obviously the value of the bat and an infield position is higher than it's going to be in center field. And they have a great defensive center fielder right now in Gutierrez. Second base is a tough position, especially if you're not used to it. You get creamed on the double plays, and we've seen a lot of good second base prospects get hurt because, they're sort of learning the position. They're not used to it. Somebody takes them out on a hard slide, or even if it's just like cumulative, just a series of small injuries there. So, I totally understand why they do it, but it's completely changed his timetable where it wouldn't surprise me now if this guy didn't debut until the second half of 2011.
Ooh. That's a long time away. I was excited for Dustin Ackley.
For a college guy who's an advanced bat, too. That's if you just, there's difference of opinion over how much power he's going to have, but the kid can hit. He can really hit, and he's got a good approach. I'm just thinking, are they going to bring this guy to the majors if he's not a finished product or close to a finished product at second base? Probably not, especially not for a team that's really focused on defense. You're going to want to get this guy ready in the field before you bring him to the big leagues, where the game is just, it's faster. So, you don't want to bring a guy who's still learning the position, a tough position, to the big leagues to let him finish that process.
Our 2010 American League Rookie of the Year will be...
My pick is Brian Mattis because he's barely a rookie. He's got 40-something innings already. So he's got experience. He's been around the league a little bit and already shown that he can get big league hitters out to some degree. I think that having that experience behind him is going to make him a better player, better pitcher in 2010. How
about NL? Anybody other than Heyward?
I think your next best of a guy who's in the big leagues, because there's, obviously Strasburg's kind of like hovering. The only other rookie I could see who's got a job, it's absolutely his, no competition, is Escobar, Alcides Escobar in Milwaukee. He's just not Rookie of the Year material in that Rookie of the Year position players are nearly always guys who hit, especially guys who hit for power. Historically, that's been the tough. Like Elvis Andrus had a great year as a rookie in Texas, but couldn't win because he didn't put up the counting stats that voters really like to see. Escobar's not going to do that. He's a slap hitter, high contact, low walk, might steal a few bases, but if he hits 10 or 12 home runs, I'd be shocked. He's not that kind of player.
We didn't dive into the whole advanced stat thing. We'll have to do it the next time. But make your case right now for why RBI should be eliminated as a mainstream stat.
Well, the thing is, they're used as a measure of individual player performance. That's what my argument is against, is that you're telling me, well, this guy's good because he had 120 RBIs. That doesn't tell me a whole lot about how well he played. It tells me about what the guys who hit ahead of him in the lineup did. How often they were on base. The more that the guys ahead of you are on base, the more RBI opportunities you're going to have. And you can kind of guess a player's RBI total just by looking at how often the guys ahead of him got on base and what the guy in question hit in terms of power, what his slugging percentage was. So to me, it's what are RBI actually telling us? They're telling us what the guys ahead of him in the lineup did and how much power he hit for. Well, we already have numbers for that. If I want to know what kind of power the guy hit for, I could look at his slugging percentage. I could just look at his double and home run totals. We already have that information somewhere else. RBI are giving him credit for something that isn't really entirely his responsibility, the fact that there were always guys on base ahead of him. So to me, since I stopped playing fantasy like 8 years ago, I have not looked at an RBI total. I couldn't tell you who led either league in RBI last year.
The only other thing it tells you is that the guy was on the field, I think. There was a year, I think 96, 97, Mo Vaughn had 144 RBI.
Because he played every day.
He played 162 games or 160 or whatever, and he had good guys sitting in front of him. And, yeah, it's a flawed stat, obviously, but at the same time, he was out there every day, and I think the RBI total reflected that. He was out there every day for a good team and had a good power season. Now, you're right. It shouldn't – if you're comparing guys and you're saying I don't know, Eric Chavez in 2005 had 100 RBI, and that was more impressive than somebody else's 130 because Chavez's lineup was terrible. I guess that's really the only way you could take it. But I'm with you. I think it seems like, can't we just all agree OPS is the best stat?
Of anything you're going to find that's easy to calculate, because I understand the objection. I use the advanced stats, but I've been working with these for a long time now, and I understand the differences between them, and I don't, I know how they're calculated, so I don't worry about it. I don't have to calculate them myself because we have Baseball Reference and Fangraphs and BP. So, but I understand that the casual fan doesn't want that. That's why I'll drop OPS in my chats and columns, even though I know it's not perfect, because it's easy. You can look at the two, OBP and slug, and add them together, and anybody can do that. And I think it's important to make sure that we keep something that's a little bit mainstream, just to make sure we're not excluding too many fans from the conversation. This is not meant to be like you're not cool enough to be in the Sabermetrics Club, which sounds ridiculous. But you know what I mean? We can't do that. I'm like anybody else. I'm like you. I grew up with baseball cards and looking at the back and this guy had more RBIs than that guy, so he's better. We all have to start somewhere.
Yeah, and the thing I love about OPS, first of all, as you said, it's very simple.
Yep.
And second, it's almost foolproof. It doesn't lie. The only thing it really doesn't reflect is how many games a guy played. So, I always use J.D. Drew as an example. He's only going against right-handed pitchers, and he's going to play between 150 and 135 games a year. And then there's no way to reflect that in the OPS. But at the same time, it just tells you. If your OPS is around 875, 900, you're good. And if it's 725 or below, you're not good.
You're not good.
There you go.
Yeah. The only guys it really screws is the guys who walk a lot. That's the one thing where but you know what? Then you look at the component stats. All right, that's his OPS. Let me just take a look and see what the OBP is, what the slug is, what's the breakdown here. You've got a pretty complete picture at that point, at least what he did on a rate basis. Then you want to look, obviously, at how many at-bats he had just to see, oh, well, he did it in 100 at-bats because he was hurt all year.
What's your favorite stat that's kind of become fashionable in the last 5-6 years?
Well, I'll tell you, the one that's become fashionable in the last year, in particular, is this fielding independent pitching, which is the one that I kind of used in my Cy Young voting, which caused this big, I'm not popular in St. Louis now, but whatever.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So, but you know what? To me, it really tells a good, quick story of how much the pitcher did that was his own responsibility. I mean, we've got to separate. We understand so much more today than we did, even 6-7 years ago. The relationship between a pitcher and his fielders. Now, we don't know exactly how to break it down, but we know what we can kind of pin specifically on the pitcher, and that's what FIP really tries to distill. It's taking out defense, it's taking out luck, and it's maybe taking out a little bit of skill for the pitcher. But the problem is we don't really know how much of that responsibility, for a ball in play goes on the pitcher. We just know it's not a lot. So let's focus on what we know is absolutely the pitcher's responsibility. And FIP and then some of the derivatives of that really try to get at that. And I think it tells us a lot about how well a pitcher performed last year, but also going forward too. You look at FIP, and there's another one called XFIP. It gives you a good sense of how a guy's going to do in the future. It's why everybody's all over Ricky Nolasco, because his FIP last year was like a run and a half below his ERA. So if he just pitches basically the same in 2010 as he did in 2009 in terms of striking guys out and not walking guys, his ERA is going to come down. And there's a fairly straightforward stat that gets that information across so that everybody has access to it.
I talked about this yesterday in the podcast with Matthew Berry. For the first time, I've been using advanced metrics for my fantasy.
Welcome to the club.
For the pitchers. Check it out. I told the story yesterday, but, somebody offered us Bobby Jenks. I'm like, I got to check out his FIP and his BABIP and his strain rate. And I was like, oh, not good. I'm not getting them.
No.
But it is helpful. I mean, you kind of have to know what to look for and where to go. And I think Fangraphs is probably the easiest how they have it laid out.
Yeah, that new dashboard they've got at the top is outstanding. Where it's just they've got the basic stats and the best advanced stats all right there for you. I think you're going to see other sites imitate that because it's so good. I'm
warming up to all of it. The one thing we disagree on is wins.
Oh, pitcher wins?
Yeah. Yeah, I just don't agree with you. We're going to have to agree to disagree.
That might be make your case 45-minute podcast.
Well, make your case in 1 minute why you don't believe them.
Because more than 50% of what goes into a pitcher win has nothing to do with the pitcher. Run support, defense, bullpen support. And somewhere in there is luck too. How well a pitcher actually pitched is only maybe 40% of the whole equation, and I'm not comfortable with using that to evaluate how well a single pitcher pitched in a specific season. Obviously, wins matter on the team level. They're the thing that matters the most. But on the individual pitcher level, they don't tell us very much at all.
But here's where I would counter. I'm looking. Sorry, I'm typing in Kurt Schilling right now. His 2004 season.
Do you think he's listening?
Well,
he will. When he finds out we talked about him, he will listen.
The Dancing with the Stars thing. All right, so 2004 Red Sox, 21-6, 3.26 ERA. 326 innings. 226 innings, 206 hits, 203 strikeouts, 35 walks. A good statistical season. In case you're wondering, his ERA plus was 150.
Very good.
But here's the thing about that season. There were a couple times that year when the bullpen was shot, and he stayed out there and took lumps for an inning or two extra. Just to protect our bullpen, and either because he had a lead or because he was behind, whatever. And I think that messed up his stats. But that's the kind of thing somebody does when they're, a winner. Now, does that reflect in the wins? Not necessarily. But
I think there are ways to get at that. There's actually a ton of value in what you're describing there. I would say Halladay is a guy like that, where if you go to Halladay and say, Doc, our bullpen's shot. Can you just, you got 3 more outs in you? I know you're gassed and it's the 8th inning and we'd probably take you out. Can you, Halladay would choke a manager before coming out of a game.
Right.
He's like, absolutely. I'll pitch the 9th and I'll pitch the 10th if I have to. In fact, I actually saw him. There was a start in Toronto where I actually saw him pitch into the 10th inning. No, that happens once every 3 or 4 years. So, I mean, there is value in that, but I think that you're not going to find that in a season-long stat. That's one of those where you really got to sit down and look at the game logs. I do that all the time when I'm writing up players, even at the amateur level. Give me the split stats. Give me the game logs. I want to know exactly what happened in each individual outing. Because if I wasn't there to see it, obviously I'm one person. There's only so much I can see. I want to actually get down to that granular level. If I'm a GM, scouting director, I'm going to take a guy in the first round. I want to know everything he did in every start he made in that college season. It's 14 starts. It's worth the hour or so to do it myself or have an analyst sit down and go through it and say, what happened? What's the story in each of these starts? Is that what happened? Did he actually go out in the 8th inning and give up a 5 spot and that's screwing up his season stat line? We got to know that, but you're only going to know that if you get down to that game-by-game level.
Yeah, and it just seems to me that most of the time the win-loss is going to kind of be around what it should. I think a good example of how that's not the case is when Dice went 18-3 in 2008, and I think so. As you said, you got to look at everything, and if somebody is only pitching 5-6 innings per start, but he's got a great bullpen and he's on an awesome team, then throw the win losses out. But
Storm Davis did that in. It was like 89 or 90. Now I'm dating myself. But remember those Oakland teams were unbelievable. He had like a 5 ERA at a point when almost everybody had an ERA around 3. And he won 19 games. I remember as a kid thinking, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I didn't fully understand it, but I was like, that is not right. Storm Davis sucks, but he won 19 games. Something is just not adding up here.
Well, wasn't the ultimate? Now I'm looking him up. Bob Welch, 27-6.
Highest since Denny McClain, I think.
Yeah. I mean, he had a good season. He had an ERA under 3 and all that, but still.
But if you add it up, was he really the best pitcher in the American League that year? No, but I mean, you think he led the league by 5 wins.
Matthew Berry predicted yesterday that Roy Halladay was going to win 25 games. You believe it?
I think that would be awesome. I wouldn't predict that for anybody. I would be thrilled obviously I know Doc a little bit, and I saw him pitch so much in Toronto. He's one of my favorite guys to watch because he's a freaking machine. And like I said, when he's on the mound, he's a nice guy off the field, but when he's on the mound, he wants to knock you on your ass. And I love guys like that. I would pay to watch guys like that.
Yeah, you need some luck with the old wins. Plus, you need luck. The other thing you need luck with is just not getting matched up against the other team's number one starter.
Yep. Because
sometimes,
which Brad Lidge is showing up this year? You're telling me Doc's going to win 25. Well, maybe he'll deserve to win 25, and Lidge is going to blow 4 of them. The problem is, and it's nothing to do with Doc. By that point, he's in the shower, and Lidge is out there throwing bad slider after bad slider, and next thing you know, the lead's gone. And it's nothing to do with how Doc pitched. So that's why it's, to me, just to look at that win total, Doc may deserve 25 wins and just not get them because a factor is completely out of his control.
There you go. So what would you say the swing is? About 8 wins either way? So if he had a season that deserved about 20, it could go anywhere from 16 to 25?
Yeah. Without looking at the numbers myself, I think that's pretty reasonable. A guy does not win 20 games typically. You might have an outlier every couple of years when, it was really like a 10-win season, if you could actually do this objectively. That's going to happen really, really seldom.
This sounds like a cool stat. They probably already have it, but what would be the swing beef for pitcher season?
Obviously Quality Starts tries to back into it at a very basic level.
Yeah.
And Baseball Prospectus has had support neutral one-loss stats for years where they just tried to back it out. If you got average run support and average bullpen support, then given the fact that you threw 6 2/3 innings and gave up 3 runs, how often would you actually win that game? And so it tries to give you a neutral one-loss record, which I think is if you like that one-lost format, and for a lot of casual fans, that's what they're used to. This tries to give you a stat that looks like something you're really used to looking at, but imparts a lot more valuable information.
So you're in Arizona until the end of this week, and then what happens? Till
tomorrow, and then home for about a week or so, and then going to go out to probably go out to Florida and start seeing some of the good high school players. I've kind of seen most, I wouldn't say all, but most of the good West Coast players. Southern California, obviously, is packed with high school players. Saw Bryce Harper, the catcher in Nevada, who's probably the number 1 pick this year. He's certainly the best guy, top guy on my draft board right now. And then when it stops raining in New England, maybe go out and actually see some minor league games.
Excellent. Good luck. Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you on ESPN.com and The Insider.
Yep.
Keith Law, talk to you soon.
Thanks.
So I get to sign off.
Whoa.
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNradio.com.
Peace out.